Hi, welcome to Community Conversations. My name is Courtney Shaw. I'm the facilitator of this series, and we are running events both in person and on Zoom. So welcome to our live audience and welcome to our Zoom audience. Next week, we have Betsy Richard coming to talk about theater, a place to see each other. And she is our drama instructor here. So please join us again next week for that. But today, we have one of my favorite presenters who's come and given lots of community conversations talks. This is Mark Gaither, and he is an instructor in business technology program here at LCC. He possesses an undergraduate degree in science education from Portland State and an MA from the University of Phoenix in curriculum and instruction. In addition to 30 years as a full-time professional educator, Mark has also run his own technology business, specializing in the development of online database solutions for businesses, K-12, and higher education, with an emphasis in patient record analytics. Mark's career as a professional educator is focused on the needs of at-risk and marginalized populations. Mark is a member of the Longview Rotary, the statewide community health worker leadership team, statewide diversity, equity, and inclusion skill standards review task force, and Cowlitz Family Health Center Board of Directors. So please welcome Mark Gaither.
Thank you. It's actually nice to have a live audience again. So I've been really enjoying where we're at in this whole process. So yeah, we're going to be talking about kind of what life is like. And let me move I'm cutting off the Y there on the screen with the information. So let me just scoot that down. Or the IES, I guess. Spelling is always fun. So we're going to look at kind of what's happened, partially because of the pandemic, but the intent of my original process into online education, and especially online distance education, was not because of the pandemic. It was actually prior to the pandemic. And I'm gonna talk about that and introduce that. And Courtney said, my background is in technology and primarily actually computer-based technology for instruction. And so this has become a very interesting topic moving forward now that we're moving out of the more virulent phase of the pandemic and getting into something where we're kind of coasting along in a new paradigm. And that paradigm has a significant impact on teaching and learning, because it's not going to, as much as all of us would like something to go back to a pre-pandemic situation, that's not going to happen. The world has fundamentally changed. Now, we'll have something similar in some ways, but I can tell you, as far as education, the change has been significant. And the change had been coming on before the pandemic, online learning, online education, but the pandemic forced it into reality. And so that's one of these realities that we're going to be talking about, is that online education is only going to be growing and changing the face of education. It's not going to be going away, and probably we are going to be stuck in what we call a mixed modality. And this is a mixed modality. So I'm presenting to you, those of you who are sitting here in the auditorium face to face, but I'm also presenting to people live on Zoom in their offices or in their homes. And I'm also presenting to a third group, which is the group who's not watching the Zoom right now, but who will log into the Zoom and watch the recording of this presentation. So they're somewhat out of sync. And we're going to talk a lot about those three realities. So, So in November of 2019, I met this woman. Her name is Angela Agaba. I met her on a dating site, Plenty of Fish, and we started talking back in November 2019, right around Thanksgiving, and turned out we liked each other, and we talked more and more and more, and things kind of, and you can see 2019, I did not have a beard, so the facial hair wasn't there, and I keep getting compliments about it, so that's why I keep it. In fact, I look at myself and think, why did I not do that before? So it's interesting when you meet somebody online, especially if you meet somebody online who is halfway around the world. Angela is from Uganda. And I had to kind of refresh my geography. Where is Uganda? And so it's almost in the center of Africa, and it's referred to as the Pearl of Africa for good reason. It's very beautiful. It's usually 75 to 80 degrees year round. It's one season. It's a tropical season, so it's almost right on the equator. It's right next to Lake Victoria. It's got beautiful wildlife, all kinds of stuff. So our relationship progressed, and it's interesting doing an online relationship in and of itself, but it's much harder when you're 8,000 plus miles away from each other and an 11-hour time difference. So just to give you perspective, there I am in Rainier, Oregon, across the bridge, and Angela is in Kampala, Uganda, which is the capital city. And it's also the largest city. There's 7 million people in and around the Kampala area, which that's larger than New York City. And people don't realize it. And on the ground, you don't necessarily realize it until you start moving around a lot. And then it becomes very obvious there's a lot of people. So, and then this was the reality weather-wise. So in November and December of 2019, this is what things looked like in Rainier. That's the road outside my house. I live up on a hill, and that's Kampala. That photo is not actually from 2019, but because the weather never changes, that's pretty much what Kampala looks like all the time, unless there's a thunderstorm. But thunderstorms kind of move around. They don't cover the whole area. We don't see the kind of blanketed cloud coverage that we get here. So let me back up. So our relationship progressed, and we decided to get married. Oh. And we had the plan to get married in April 2020. Yeah. And in fact, if you look at the inside of our wedding rings, it has our names in there, and it has the date of our wedding, April 2020. But in March of 2020, as I'm preparing to go, the pandemic hits. And things change, and travel obviously gets restricted. And Uganda does something very interesting that many other African countries did. They closed their borders completely. No one could go in and no one could go out. Okay. In fact, goods, so Uganda is a landlocked country. And so any goods that are imported either get there by plane or by truck, and to a small extent by rail. And so the trucks were actually coming up from like the Kenyan side of the border, stopping, unloading everything, and the Ugandan trucks were loading everything up and then delivering them out to the population. And so the borders remained closed from March 2020 all the way through October of 2020. And finally, once the borders were opened, I was able to get on an airplane, fly to Uganda. I got there October 5th. I had to be there 30 days before we could actually be married. We ended up getting married on November 6th. During the pandemic, Justice of the Peace, the Justice of the Peace is wearing a mask, I'm wearing a mask, Angela's wearing a mask, our two witnesses are wearing a mask, and those were the only people in the room when we had our wedding ceremony. But it's October and November, and it's fall quarter. So I left LCC with a full contingent of classes in the middle of fall quarter. And when I say a full contingent of classes, most instructors teach 3, maybe 4 classes. I teach between 8 and 12 every quarter because of the nature of our area. So I leave with all these classes and a lot of students, and I'm trying to figure out how am I going to do this. And in the trip across, it's very interesting. So I left Portland International Airport. I flew from Portland International Airport early in the morning and got down to LAX, Los Angeles, around noonish. Well, I have classes going on and I can't, I have the agreement that they're going to go let me teach for pretty much 3 months, but I have to stay in contact with my students. So I'm in LAX, and in LAX, the international flights go from a separate building. And so I get over to that separate building, I'm carrying all my bags with me, and I have to get on the internet. So I have to use whatever Wi-Fi I can connect to. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And I'm actually getting in my Canvas spaces, talking to my students, doing all that stuff as I'm sitting there for 5 hours waiting to get on the plane, right? Which I'm tired at this point. I've been up all night doing the final packing. I've flown already. I'm sitting in the airport trying to watch my stuff while I'm doing stuff, and then I get on the plane heading to Uganda. Well, there's 2 flights. The first flight is from LAX to Dubai. It's a 16-hour flight. Now, luckily, because of the pandemic, the plane was at about 30% capacity. So I got a middle row of seats, 5 seats, all to myself. So I could actually sleep, but I still had to maintain contact with my students. So I had to buy the in-flight Wi-Fi that allowed me to email my colleagues and get into my classes and do all that kind of stuff. And it worked great. It was like $20 for the in-flight Wi-Fi for just 16 hours, but it made it possible. Get to Dubai, have to spend a night in Dubai. So I have to get, now I'm tired. I've been up almost 36 hours. I still have to get on my computer before I go to bed because it's whatever time it was in Dubai, it was daytime over here. So I'm having to answer emails, talk to students, even go to meetings. Then I have to get up and then 5 more hours into Entebbe. And when I get to Entebbe, now connection becomes a real problem. Because Angela, when we're in Entebbe, we're staying in a hotel. So in the hotel, I could get a connection. But outside of the hotel, there was no way to connect to the internet because Entebbe is about an hour and a half away from Kampala, where Angela lives. And even at that, the Wi-Fi where she lived with her cousin in an apartment was not enough to be able to handle what I was doing. So we knew this ahead of time, but what we had to do was get myself a phone account so I could actually then hotspot from my phone. But the problem is when you go to get a phone in Uganda and buy an account there and get your SIM card, you have to do it in person. So that was going to be a few days before we go in person. And they don't like you doing it with a Visa card, which when we talk about going over there, money is a whole separate issue. So I figured out, okay, what can I take money-wise? I can't go over with a whole bunch of cash because American cash doesn't spend the same. I can't go over with traveler's checks because that doesn't work. I can't go over with a cashier's check because I don't have any way. I can't do a wire transfer. So I took my credit cards and I made one big mistake, and I wish somebody had pointed this out. I should have taken my bank cards with me, but I didn't take my bank cards with me. There's an ATM everywhere in Uganda. But without a bank card, I couldn't pull out cash from my bank. So all I could do was use my credit cards to buy stuff, and not everywhere used credit cards. And on top of it, if I wanted access to cash, I had to do a cash advance on my credit card, which was financially painful. Okay. But sometimes I had to do that. So the second time I went over, I took my bank cards, and then everything was fine. So anyway, so we're going through all this process to get there and actually get me connected. So I want to kind of give you a couple more pieces here before so when we look at this, that picture on the left is a picture right before the beginning of the pandemic. Alex Emerson is sitting there with students from her Spanish class, and she is waiting for another classroom to open up. So you can see how many students face-to-face Alex had in her class. They're all sitting in this lobby outside some other classrooms. They're just waiting for a classroom to open up so they can go do their Spanish stuff, right? And then next to that, after the pandemic started, you can see there, that's not a real LCC class, but it's typical, is the Zoom space. And this is what Zoom looked like when we were first beginning to Zoom in remotely. And in November, October and November, all of our courses were remote. We were all remote. There were some few exceptions on campus, but in fact, even in October, November, I don't think they were actually operating face-to-face. Everything was remote. So that was a brand new reality. We went from this to that. And here's the big thing, even today, you know, I said I'm talking to you folks, I'm talking to a group that's out somewhere else. They could be anywhere in the country watching this. We have instructors, and we've had instructors before the pandemic who live in different states and teach these classes and are in different time zones. And then I'm halfway across the world with an 11-hour time difference. And sometimes folks aren't watching the live presentation. They're going in and doing the asynchronous stuff. So time went out the window. Like I was tethered to 2 different clocks. And now on my Apple Watch, I have 2 different clock faces. So I can easily look at, oh, it's this time in Kampala, it's Angie's time in Kampala, right? And it's my time here, because sometimes I forget, because daylight saving times switches it from 10 hours to 11 hours. So it just went to 11 hours with this most recent switch. So over there right now, it is 9 p.m. It's coming up on 9 p.m. And 9 p.m., 10 p.m. Is that face clock wrong? The face clock's on. Okay, so it's coming up on 10. See, time just gets thrown all over the place if you don't have the correct watch to be looking at. So I'm trying to and then when I'm over there, I'm trying to do this. So time is just totally, you have to be tied to it, but it's this ephemeral thing. Because when I'm sitting in Uganda in the middle of the night, lecturing to a group of students, I have to imagine that it's daytime for them. And they can't comprehend typically, unless because it's dark, I'm sitting over there in the middle of the night conducting this lecture. We'll talk more about that as we go along. So this is this 3 realities. And if you have questions as we're going, feel free to ask. So here's the timeline. So November 2019, we meet. March 2020, the pandemic begins. April 20th is our wedding day. Not, right? September 21st, fall quarter begins. Somewhere in there, I couldn't remember the exact date, and I didn't feel like looking it up because time's irrelevant anyway at this point. Okay, then we go October 5th, I get to Uganda. November 6th, we get married. December 21st, I return to the US. Okay. Then spring break, I go back over, and there was some overlap with classes actually, because I was over there for 3 weeks. Angela, myself, and our daughter Amber, who was 9 at the time, we go for 2 weeks in Dubai, which then gave me a whole nother time thing. And I still had to do some lecturing and stuff. And we're trying to have fun. Okay. And we'll talk more about that whole process in a minute. And then I went back to Uganda this last fall. So I went back early September and came back just at the first of the year. Missed New Year's, but was over there for Christmas and my birthday and some other things. So this is our wedding. That's Angela's extended family there. That's our wedding picture, just to give you some reference. Okay, so should I back up just a second there? Yeah, it's kind of fun. Very colorful. This is our wedding reception, which lasted for hours and hours and hours, and dancing and all kinds of fun. Oh, and you didn't see it, but so there's very few white individuals in Uganda and Kampala. Everybody who's white that's there is there traveling, right? In Kampala itself, probably less than 5,000 white individuals among 7 million Black individuals. So I stand out, obviously. They refer to white individuals as Mzungu. It's a Swahili word. It originally means wanderer, but it's now applied if you're white, you're a Mzungu. So everywhere I would walk, everywhere, hey, Mzungu, little kids, hey, Mzungu, you know, everybody's waving at me. You've got celebrity status, people coming up, can I get your phone number? Hey, what are you doing here? Where are you from? All this kind of stuff. Mzungu, Mzungu, Mzungu. My extended family refers to me as Mzungu, right? Everybody, like, you know. And the thing about that is it can be overwhelming. It's also interesting because it made me think about, well, and this is not the topic of discussion today, but it made me think about what happens when a Black person is in our white society. Are they treated as a celebrity? Not at all. Not at all. In fact, in some cases, much the opposite. And so there's all that going on. Anyway, so living in two different worlds. Before I left, not only did I have to think about everything that I was packing up to take with me for 3 months, I also had to think about, how do I take care of my house and my cat, who wasn't going with me? And luckily, I ended up going later because my dog passed away before I went. But if I had left in March and April, I would have had to have something going on with my dog, and he was 9 or 10 years old at the time, and that would have been kind of traumatic for him. So anyway, so how do I make sure my cat's taken care of? My cat's an indoor cat. It has never been outside. It has never left the house. It would be traumatized, and it's 14 years old. So, okay, how do I take care of the cat? How do I watch over the house? I have the neighbors come in once a day to feed the cat, make sure it has water, brush it, check its litter box. But the cat eats more than once a day, right? So I had to buy one of these automatic pet feeder things that will feed the cat 4 times a day, a prescribed amount that I set up at prescribed times. So it's great. As long as it gets filled periodically, usually once every month and a half, the cat's good. And then you just have to make sure the water's good, and I have a large water dispenser for the cat. The other piece that you see here is a wireless camera. I bought 3 of those so I could watch the inside of the house and I could watch some other things. And then, because it's wintertime, right? Which is one of the most dramatic times if you own a house, right? You've got to keep track of stuff, pipes freezing, stuff like that. I happen to be on a spring, but I also collect rainwater. And so I had to be able to monitor my rainwater and had to monitor the pumps and things like that. And I'll show that to you in a minute. The other thing is a wireless outlet. So I wired my entire house with wireless outlets, wireless switches, wireless other things. So I can turn off almost any light in the house with Alexa. I can turn off, I can turn on and off other things. I can play music at any time. And when I leave with Alexa, I can tell Alexa to guard the house, and it will turn the lights on and off to make it look like somebody's there. I don't even have to turn them on and off. And so I talked to the neighbors up the road after I got back, and they go, "You left?" Well, we didn't even know, because lights were coming on, your cars were in the drive. You know, I had the neighbor periodically move the cars around. So it was great. And then that's an Echo Flex, which is an Alexa, that's the equivalent of an Alexa Dot. I bought 3 of those for in the house, and I have 3 of them throughout the house, and I can just talk to them like anything. And then I ended up the second time going over to Uganda, taking 3 of them over there with me, and now we have 3 of those in Uganda. And so if I were to, let me try and share my content from this device. So if you don't notice it, I'm in here at least once. Yeah, I'm in here twice. So I'm in here under the Lower Columbia College, and I'm presenting to you from that. But I'm in here as Mark Gaither off of my phone. And I'm going to try and share my screen from here. Let's see if it does it. Is it share? Yes. All right, you're seeing my phone, right? Okay, so let me open up a couple things here. I'm going to open up my wireless cameras. I'm not going to show you the inside of the house, but I'll show you the inside of the well house, because this is one of the things that concern me the most. So this is the inside of the well house. Can you see that? Oh yeah, awesome. It's not turning sideways, but what you're seeing here is a pressure tank. You're seeing a couple, there we go. You're seeing up there a couple of containers of water, two 275-gallon cube containers. And you're seeing some pipes that go to the pressure tank and then into the house, and then just all the junk that gets collected in a rainwater storage shed. So I needed to make sure that I could actually do things here. So I can actually, from here, I can go in, and sound is also in there. I can go in from here and jump into Alexa. So you guys are, yep, awesome. All right. And it takes Alexa a second because it's just takes Alexa a second. I'm not going to enable Alexa, but I can go to my devices. And you can see I have lights, plugs, switches, all of these things. My grow light for one of my plants is turned on. It runs for 8 hours. That was another thing. I wanted to make sure that plant lived. I've been nurturing that plant for years. So it has a grow light. It comes on at sunrise or before sunrise. It does a whole bunch of stuff. But if I go to my plugs, you can see I have the well house here, and I can turn on the power to the entire well house, or I can turn on a well house heater. So there's a little space heater out there so I can make sure that nothing freezes. But there's also a pump, a shallow well pump. And if I turn that on, which I'll do for 60 seconds, I'm going to turn that pump on. It's running the pump. And if I go back, if I turned on the sound here, oh, that's the pump running in the background. So I can actually hear the pump running. So it's great. I can tell that things are working. Turn that off, and there we go. And I can do the same thing with the lights. I can do the same thing with anything. And if I wanted to, and I won't do this, if I wanted to though, I could go to one of the Echo Flexes in Kampala, and I could drop in the living room in Kampala and say hi to Angie, and she could be sitting there watching television because it's about 10. She is probably watching Netflix at this point. Okay. But I won't do that because I didn't tell her I would do that. So that would be bad. So that's just the prep for leaving and being away from home. Okay, let me get out of here. Stop sharing. Okay, and then are we back? Yeah, we're back. Okay. So that's the prep for leaving. And then I had to prep. Am I not sharing? Let me go back to that. Come on, where'd that go? Ah. Okay. So I'm getting ready to leave. I'm putting all this stuff in the house. I'm rewiring the switches. I'm putting the plugs in. I'm testing everything out on Alexa. This was a process, right? And then I have to plan for what I'm going to do when I get to Kampala, knowing that I'm going there with all of this stuff, right? And I need to be able to do my classes. So up on the upper, your left-hand corner, up in the upper left-hand corner, that green item up there, that's a power adapter. It is the smallest universal power adapter I could find. Works in 170 countries. I can adapt to any type of power. The little sliders on the side pull out different plug outlets, the male part of the plug, right? And I can just pop it in. I can control 4 different USB devices. I can plug in one device to it, right? So it was great because I have to be able to power up my computers that I'm taking with me. I have to be able to charge my phones, all of that stuff. I took 3 of those with me. They were extremely popular, okay? Because you can charge all kinds of devices. The other 2 things you're seeing there are solar powered lights. One of the infrastructure issues in Uganda is that power goes out pretty regularly. And it can be out for a short period of time, an hour or 2. It can be out for a day. And so if you can't see, especially if you're teaching classes in the middle of the night, trying to stumble around, getting every foot, it's a problem. And in one of the bathrooms that we have in our current apartment, the light does not work. And getting somebody to fix the light is a problem. So we just put a solar light in there and it lasts throughout the night and then it recharges itself in the day and it's great. So I took like 8 of those over with me because light is like critical. And that's one of the infrastructure issues. I told you I took the Echo Flex over. I took a battery charger over for my camera. It was more useful for my mice. So I use a wireless mouse with my computers, and I needed to be able to charge that up, or I was stuck to using the trackpad, which is not a great issue. This is a wireless hotspot where if I had a SIM card for it, then I could use that instead of using my phone to hotspot with. And then over here, I brought a hammock because it's a tropical zone. I thought I would relax. This ended up late at night, actually becoming my classroom. It has a mosquito net on it. The mosquitoes over there carry malaria. I was taking malaria tablets, but I am a mosquito magnet. And you know, even though I'm protected from malaria, there's nothing worse than being bit by mosquitoes and having, so I would, in the middle of the night, I'd be in the hammock, out on the balcony, with my laptop there, with the mosquito netting over me, with a little flashlight that I could hang from the top of the thing, and I'd be doing my classes, right? And it just created this kind of surreal environment, like, okay, how much can I sit up in the hammock while I'm doing this? And I learned that actually it was better, rather than laying parallel to the direction of the hammock, if you lay perpendicular to the direction of the hammock, it's easier to sit up, right? So you learn all these little tricks. And then you also learn that you can set things outside the hammock, water or whatever that you want to grab and drink, and survive out there pretty easily. Temperatures usually only got down to about 68, so it wasn't too bad. But that was an interesting piece of the reality as well. So I want you to imagine. So I finally get my SIM card for my phone, but we actually, the first time we were over there, we rented an Airbnb for 2.5 months. And we rented a car so we could drive around. And then during the day, we're going and doing daily activities. We're going to the grocery store. We're going to visit friends and relatives. We're doing all of those kinds of things during the day in Kampala. Well, that's nighttime over here, no problem. But around 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night, Kampala time, the world over here is starting to wake up. And so when Ange is going to bed, or when I would be going to bed over there at 9 p.m., it's 11 p.m. over here. It's 11 a.m. over here, right? My classes typically start at 9 a.m. over here. So that means I always have to do this backwards. At 7 p.m. over there, I have to start teaching my classes. Well, at 7 p.m., it's dinner time. And one of the worst situations was, you have 3 things to drink in Uganda. You have water. We'll talk about that in a second. You have water, you have tea, and you have beer. So quite often, we're sitting down in the evening and Ange goes, "Do you want a beer?" Right? And I'm going, "I can't." And it took me forever to explain to her, I can't have a beer because I'm working. And she goes, "You're not working, you're right here." No, I'm in class, right? And this is now this is a whole unique thing. I'm in class, I could have a beer because all I'd have to do is really set it off to the side. It's my evening, I have had a long day. A beer sounds really good in an 80-degree day, but I couldn't do it because, I'd be breaking a rule, right? And so that wouldn't be, and it would be on camera, if I made a mistake. And so, that was such an interesting reality, because we would go out with friends and like I'd have to get into class, or we'd go over to a relative's house and they'd be, do you want a beer? I can't. And then it seems like I'm being rude. Right. And so trying to explain to people. So I would literally, when we were over at someone else's house, I would have to go into a separate room to be alone to conduct my classes, because they're drinking, having conversations, doing all those things, and I'm in teaching classes. So anytime we went anywhere that was away from where we were at, I had to carry this around. And inside here, and I'll just give you an idea, because I'm not going to be able to pull them up. So inside here, what I usually would carry, the college graciously outfitted me with a Microsoft Surface. So this was the computer that I used to connect to the internet. Right. So I'd set up my workstation. Now, when we had the Airbnb, it was great because it was totally furnished. This last time I went over, we ended up getting our own apartment, and you can run out and buy furniture to furnish an apartment pretty easily, but it's low grade furniture. So if you want furniture that's going to last, you have to have it made. So we got this wonderful apartment, a 2,000 square foot apartment, $300 a month, 2 balconies, a 25 by 25 sitting room, all of this kind of stuff, 2 bedrooms, no furniture. And for a month, while we're waiting for our furniture to be made and delivered, I'm sitting in a plastic chair with a cardboard box that our washing machine came in. And that's my desk. And I would move it around based upon where other activities were going on, right? And so I'm sitting there on the Surface doing that. But sometimes I could not rely on the Surface because I had to have an internet connection. And if I couldn't have an internet connection through my hotspot, I had to hotspot off of my phone. Well, that creates a problem. This phone I kept connected to my American phone number with my American SIM chip. And my phone provider tried to tell me that, well, you're not going to get service over there. And if you want to get service, you'd have to pay international fees, and it's an arm and a leg and blah, 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 blah. So I just left it with that. And I took a second phone over. To be my Uganda phone. So I got a Uganda SIM chip in this. Now, it turns out, accidentally one day, I get a phone call from Tamara Gilchrist, my boss, on this phone, which is my American phone. Hello. Hi, Mark. My American phone number in Uganda still accepted phone calls from anybody, primarily Apple users, but it was great. I could get phone calls without paying any additional money, simply because I left the SIM card in there and didn't switch it up. And I used this for my Uganda phone calls. And then I had to be using WhatsApp to do other stuff. So, and that's primarily how Angie and I still communicate to this day, is through WhatsApp. So I have that. But in case that laptop for some reason failed, because remember, it only had held a charge for so long, I had a backup laptop. And this is the interesting part about traveling. So when you're traveling, you can't pack any of this in your stowed luggage. You have to take it all in carry-on. So, and you have to take all of your devices out, right? All your phones, all your laptops, everything. So I'm pulling out all these devices, right? So I have another laptop and trying to put you have to be flat when they go through the bins. It was the worst. And then people are looking at you like, what are you doing? On top of that, right, I have to be able to charge the laptops, but I could only do that through wall current. I also had to make sure that my phones didn't go out. So I had to carry a couple battery backups for my phones, because I have 2 phones, right? And then Ange has a phone, and she always wanted to steal my chargers. And it's like, no. So I got her own charger. And it's like, but on top of that, you have to carry all the cables. So I had a separate little bag that had all the cables, right, that I would need just in case anything went wrong. And I could easily then, grab and if this bag ended up not getting packed with my stuff when we went out, then it was horrible. Because in Uganda, I'll show you a picture of traffic. In Uganda, you could sit in a traffic jam, and this was not unheard of, and move 20 feet in an hour. And around 5 and 6 o'clock in the evening, up through until about 10 p.m., even though there was a 7 o'clock curfew, that was usually the case. So I'd be teaching my classes off of my phone, sitting in a car with other people in the car who are trying to talk and have conversation. And then there's all this noise, and I'm trying to teach my classes. And that was fairly common, right? And we would try as much as possible to be somewhere, but if you get stuck in traffic, you're stuck in traffic and you're not going anywhere. And then there were times where, so it's illegal for a driver to drink in Uganda, but it's not illegal for the passengers to be drinking in Uganda. So there's one time I'm in the car, I'm in a meeting on my phone, and we had just come from some pre-wedding event, and Angela and a couple of her friends are in the back passing around this bottle, and I'm watching this bottle go across and it's like, I'm not drinking, you guys. They're in the back seat. Luckily it was a department meeting, and so my folks understood. On top of all of that, just in case those devices went out, I brought along an iPad, right? Which actually I had to use in some cases to teach my class. And then this is really interesting. So a camera, my DSLR. So at night, if I'm not in the hammock protected from the mosquitoes, and I have to sit in at a meeting and I wanted to sit down, I had to protect myself from the mosquitoes there. So I had this one jacket that I would put on, and I'd be sitting in these meetings, right, with this lightweight jacket on, lightweight enough, right? And usually I'd have it over a short sleeve shirt, but this works, right? And so I'd have this on, and I'd have the hood up because the mosquitoes otherwise are going for my face, right? And so I'm sitting on camera, teaching classes or sitting in meetings with this hood like this, thinking that, okay, I look like a gangster, right? Trying to teach my classes, right? And it's just, and I'm sitting at a cardboard box doing this in a plastic chair. So that was the first time over there. The second time was much better once we got the furniture and everything was okay, and I figured out the hammock thing and all of that kind of stuff. There were some other preparations that had to be made. First time I was over there, I could not find a teapot to save my life. Not even a metal one. Okay. So if you wanted to heat hot water, you did it in like a regular pot, right? Saucepan. Or you had an electric kettle, which was great, but that just boils the water. It's not great for steeping your tea in. And I'm really a big one on steeping tea, right? And so I ended up taking I had to take one over in my luggage. The amount of things I took over in my luggage, there are things you cannot get in Uganda. You cannot get Cheetos cheese snacks. So literally, I filled up half of a small suitcase with individual packages of Cheetos, because Ange goes, bring us over some Cheetos. Going, what? So I ordered this big thing of Cheetos, stuff them in the suitcase, take them over. They survived. The Cheetos lasted forever. Not really, but they lasted long. And the second time I went over, I learned my lesson. I'm not doing the little individual packages. I got the big they make a big jumbo pack of the soft Cheetos, took those over. Chocolate was huge. American chocolate that you can get is much better than the chocolate you can get in Uganda. So I go over with tons of chocolate, that kind of stuff, and all kinds of other things. But so the teapot was huge. These little devices here with the Apple logo on them, these are air tags. And I took these on the second trip over, and the air tags work anytime they come in contact with a wireless connection. And if you connect them to your phone, you can track your luggage. So I put it in all of my luggage, and I was able to watch where my luggage was the whole time I went over. I keep one now on my car keys. So in case I lose my car keys, I can find my car keys. Ange has one on her car. I left 3 of them over there. Ange has one on her car keys. We have one in the car in case the car gets stolen. And we have one that our daughter Amber in a wrist watch kind of device, a wristband she can wear on her person if she's out and we want to know where she's at. Yes, we track our child, only in certain circumstances. And then over here, you have a bottle that is a fillable water, a water bottle to filter water. You just press that inner container into the outer container that's full of water, and it completely filters the most dirty water ever, and you can actually have drinking water. We've actually upgraded from that in a whole bunch of ways, and there's all kinds of solutions around that, so water's not a problem. But if you drink the water out of the tap when it's available, you will end up with a disease, and in some places you might end up with typhoid. So that's an issue. Time-wise, let's see here. This is our kitchen. This is our current kitchen in our current apartment. The stoves, very interesting, they're propane. So you use propane indoors for the gas stoves. You can see we were doing bottled water. We now have a bottled water dispenser that we use. There's a kettle there off to the side, extra carafe for hot water. There's the little tea kettle, my little tea steeping kettle, a microwave. We have a refrigerator. We have all of these things. And that's a fully tiled kitchen, floor to ceiling. It's great. But you know, it's one of those things where you've got to work on some stuff. I didn't log into it. I want to try and show you some images. Let me see if I have them where I can easily get to them. And maybe it's better if I do it off of my phone. Let me go into my Google or my Amazon photos here. And I want to show you some pictures so you can get a better understanding of Uganda. Of course, it's going to try and upload. There we go. And okay. Go back to sharing. So you can imagine this is what my life is like teaching classes over there. I'm switching from one device to the other all the time. In some cases, I have to be in multiple devices at the same time. So you would see 3 of me logged into the Zoom space. So let's see, I'm in the broadcast here. This will stop. Yep. Okay, so I'm sharing. I go back to here. And I just want to show you some of these images. This is interesting. This is a wedding of a friend of ours in Kampala. The interesting piece about this, at the end of the wedding, they give the priest who performed the ceremony gifts. And one of the gifts that we were asked to take over because Angie's sister didn't want to take it in her car was a live chicken. And I'm looking at, before we left the compound, I'm looking at the chicken in the driveway, and Angie goes, "Oh, we have to take the chicken." And it's a big chicken, and it's a lot. And I'm going, "I'm not taking the chicken. The car's full of people, and I'm not taking the chicken." And I'm going, her sister, the only reason that chicken is still sitting there is because your sister didn't want to take that in her car. I'm not taking the chicken. This is Ange and me. Who's that? I think that was 2 years ago, right before I left. This is Amber, our daughter. This is the day that her decker, it's a double decker, it's a bunk bed. They call them deckers over there. She got her double decker delivered. And I think she was a little sad because Ange and Amber had moved out of living with their cousins. And so they're living in now this new apartment. This is interesting. This is kind of the building of stuff. And the only reason I'm showing you this is because they support, when they're building, those are acacia wood limbs. And they use it as the concrete's drying to make sure that they'll take all of those out of there afterwards, but it helps support the structure as it's being built. This is a propane stove. It's actually propane and electric. So the oven's electric and then the burners are propane. That's on the flight. I told you, everybody wanted to be my friend. So Ange is going to pick up a document at some government agency. This is the parking attendant. Not only was he talking to me while I'm sitting in the car waiting, he wanted my phone number and he wanted my autograph and all of these other things. Everybody became the Mzungo's friend, right? Cheetos, right? Took over a couple of days. Amber loves to swim, so this is Amber swimming. This is a staple food in Uganda. So this is beans and what they call matoke. Matoke is typically the big bunches of what look like green bananas. They're rock hard. They have to be boiled or baked before you then can actually get them to a stage where you can eat them, but they're wonderful. I think they're great. Oh, this is a monkey at a local bar who found a drink and was going to help himself to it. This was one of the things, the wildlife that you run into on a regular basis. In November, they harvest the grasshoppers, and then these are roasted grasshoppers, and you eat them like popcorn. They're fantastic. The whole grasshopper, just FYI. There's some construction there. This is me on some farmland, and let's see if we can run the video. This young relative of Anne's
Here, hold this.
Pump.
Take a picture. Actually, it's
Like this.
And he's having trouble because he's not doing a long enough draw on it. I was tired and sweaty, and I wanted to wash my hands and my face, so I had to help him pump it. But it's great because you can see what living on a farm would be like.
I help.
This is their only source of water. Okay, and so the trick, if you,
I said this is going nowhere.
As a kid in Pennsylvania, this is the water supply we had. Was a pump well, a hand pump well. And so it was kind of fun. Dogs are treated much differently in Uganda than people treat them over here. They're not indoor pets, they're outdoor pets. They're guard animals usually. This is Schneider. Schneider was amazing. He looked like he was always on death's door. The second time I went over, he looked healthier than when I saw him the first time I was over there. There's us. Oh, there's Amber. That's a great picture of Amber from the wedding. Okay, see the waffle? I spent 4 weeks combing Kampala trying to find a waffle maker because I had promised Amber, who's 9 years old, that she could have waffles. I finally found one, but it was impossible to find a waffle maker. I mean, that's kind of the disparity that you run into. They have Netflix over there. They have flat screen TVs. They have refrigerators. Not everybody does. Not everybody has a washing machine in their house. A lot of washing is still done by hand. Not everybody has internet. Most of all internet transactions are done on the phone. There are people, every grocery store you go to, and there's not huge grocery stores, every little side market that you go to that is like a Minute Mart or something like that has a security guard with a machine gun. ATMs are prevalent, but there's usually a security guard there with a gun. One time we're driving around, and as I said, I'm the Mzungo, and I'm driving around and I see a white person off on the side in front of this shop. I'm going, hey, I'm not alone. And then I take a closer look, and it was a mannequin. Yeah. Yep. It was pretty close, actually. I didn't go up and shake hands, but it was like, it was from me to you. Yeah. So it's there's the waffle maker. There's some wedding stuff. I love this picture. It's like, we're actually married at this point, and this is already the direction that's going with our marriage, right? It's like, oh, okay. I want to show you, oh, this is a wonderful waterfall there. This is another piece of being a Mzungo. So we went to this waterfall, and there's this huge picnic thing going on, and there are these beer distributors there. And it was great because what they wanted to get a picture or pictures of the Mzungo holding up Tusker Light, which is the brand of beer. So they're handing me free bottles of beer, and I'm like, okay, I can stand for a picture there. It's like, great, hey, yeah, Tusker Light, whatever, right? This little girl is living in a more traditional rural environment. So the two women that are seated there, they're both wives of the same husband. The little girl is one of their daughters. she'd never seen a Mzungo before. And she'd never seen a camera. So I asked her if I could take her picture, but before I took her picture, I wanted to understand what the camera did. So I gave her the camera so she could take a picture of me, right? This is the disparity in the technology. Out here, there's no internet connection. The only internet connection I had was from hotspotting from my phone. And I had to be within a wireless range to be able to do that. There's some folks. This is the traffic I want to show you. So this is typical traffic in, is it this one? Is it that one? No, it's probably the other one. I want to show you this traffic because this will give you an idea of what traffic is like in, it's not that one, in Uganda. I think it's that one. Let's turn it. Is that worse?
Is the only fuel with an octane level of 95, which gives your car the best performance and efficiency. So whether it's
you can see multiple things going on in multiple directions, and there's no right of way. You just jump in, and literally cars and motorcycles and everything are moving that close. Construction, bricks are, oh, this was the better one. I'm going to show this real quick. We're almost done time-wise. This is this is a tiny, tiny traffic jam.
What's up? Describe what
These are bodas. Those are the principal mode of transportation. Cars are prevalent, but
it's like
really
a frying
rare.
pan without a handle.
Ride bodas, and you can see.
Imagine a frying pan without a handle.
And you can see cars going in different lanes. There's no lines.
No.
It's all very, very interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, it's crazy. The differences. So here's the deal. Why is this important? Why is this reality where I went and I did this for 3 months? Well, because we were all as instructors forced to do this for 2 years. And the reality is now, if you ask any of us who are back teaching face-to-face, some of our students show up face-to-face, but some of our students still, and actually a majority, still show up online through Zoom, and not always at the same time, at different times. And it's not because of fear of getting the COVID disease, it's part of it. But the bigger piece, and this is why it's not going to go away, we've all discovered it's convenient. And Americans, above anything else, love convenience. It is why McDonald's has a drive-through. It is why we all drive cars. It is why we all have all of these things that if you grew up 50, 60, 70 years ago, we didn't have all of those conveniences. But now we're so used to having those conveniences that we're tethered to the concept of convenience. And so we are going to be living and teaching, especially in education, in a multimodality environment. Some of the students will be arriving face-to-face. Some of the students will be arriving at the same time in Zoom, and some of the students will be arriving at their own time watching the recordings. And that's where we're at. So that's it. And I know
All
I
right.
went a little over time. Any questions?
Yeah, we do have a question coming in from the Zoom. So we have, do you have a list of the devices you used? I'm intrigued by all of the wireless outlets and being able to check on things at home while away. We can do like a full
Yeah,
list.
I can do a full list of everything. I'll put together a comprehensive list of everything I
Yeah.
took.
What would you say are your top 3 needs?
Oh, the top 3, 2 phones, definitely 2 phones. You could hotspot off the phone. It becomes very expensive. So that's why the wireless hotspot is a little better. And then, so that's the top one, all of that stuff. The other top need was more than 1 laptop. And then the third one, what would the third one be? Always have a change of clothes, honestly, because literally in the daytime, you're wearing shorts and a t-shirt. But if you go out at night because of mosquitoes and the temperature and you're going out to socialize, you have to carry long pants and a jacket typically. So having a backpack, I mean, literally having good backpacks are great. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So you mentioned there's 3 ways to go to class: before, after, and during.
Mhm.
Okay, so how does that affect you in trying to grade your students?
It can be very difficult. I have to do, in some cases, I have to do mandatory meetings. So I put students in teams, for example, and the teams meet on their own time. And so I have to periodically require they do a mandatory meeting with me. And usually those are 5 to 10 minutes at the most, but they get to pick the time typically. I give them some suggested times and hope they'll do it. But sometimes I've been meeting with them late at night. I've been meeting with them on Saturdays. And the same thing for grading. Things come in at different timeframes. Even though I have due dates, I still have to be flexible on those grading due dates.
And some of them don't participate. And so then in the olden days, yeah, participation used to be part of your grade.
Yeah, and it still is for my classes. It's huge. And so we build in, but I have to measure participation in different ways now. So it's not necessarily seeing them face to face. I have to look at, I keep track of when did they actually get in and participate. I can track their attendance in Zoom. It's a little more onus on me. That will get better, but it's going to take time.
Well, you're remanaging the way you teach, and the students are helping you do it their way.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
One more question and then we're going to go.
Were you always like pretty in depth with technology, pretty inclined with it? Or
Yeah,
did
yeah,
that just like
it's-
you had to learn?
Oh, am constantly learning something new every day, even now over here. But yeah, no, I'm
So like with the automated stuff with your house, did you already know like pretty much like how to do that? Or was that like kind of a thing that you had
I
to?
understood it, but there is a learning curve. Even, even now today, I blew out my shallow well pump the other day because I have an automated thing. I can tell Alexa to run the pump. I just use a word, a command word. She'll run the pump. I used the word twice and the pump stayed on for 4 hours until it burnt up. Yeah. So don't use the same command twice in a row quickly, right? That's nobody ever told me that, right? So that's a new thing.
Thank you very much. Thanks. We're out of time. We gotta get
Yeah, that's
going.
fine.
But please come again next week. And thanks to our Zoom audience and our recorded audience. And thank you to Mark.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, everybody. What was your question?
All that stuff was military technology.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that right there, if the percentage was just